nervous because I'm here now.
Hey guys, welcome into another episode of 410 Sports Talk. James Haskell, along with my co-host Glenn Martin, and we have punched our ticket into the playoffs. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. If you didn't see, the Baltimore Ravens put the beat down on the Cincinnati Bengals, 38-3. We are in the dance. Glenn, feeling good?
Oh, feeling great. I mean, it's not like we expected anything different going into this game, right, Jimbo? I mean, this was a formality, right?
That's right, absolutely. And I'll tell you what, I don't think any team wants to see us, but we got a lot going on now that we're in the playoffs. So I want to take a quick second to talk to you guys about it. Upcoming this week, because it is the first week going into the playoffs, we'll have a lot of shows going off. We got Joshua Harris, of course, Lamar's personal quarterback, coming on the show, our quarterback coach coming on the show to talk about his mindset going into the playoffs for the third time. Your guy, Evan Washburn, coming on the show to talk about his thoughts on the Ravens this postseason, along with the NFL playoff landscape as a whole. And then, of course, we'll be bringing in a guest from either team that we end up playing, whether it ends up being the Colts or the Titans. So make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications, give us a like, leave us a comment, all of the above. And then also check out our Patreon for our daily posts, our Ravens Reflection, in which we are giving a little insight every single day. It's only $1 a month, along with other opportunities to interact with the show. So all that being said, let's break down this game and then take a little bit of time to maybe touch on outlook into the playoffs, of course, which we'll get into later on during the week. But let's start with this game, Glenn. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I'm going to get into some of the numbers here, and I'll start with the losing team, the Cincinnati Bengals. Boy, it was a much different week this week for Brandon Allen. Last week he's the FedEx Air Player of the Week as he scorches the Houston Texans secondary. Not so good this one. He goes just 6 of 21 from the field for 48 yards and 2 interceptions. Yeah, did not go well.
He played a real defense this week.
Yeah, he played a real motivated defense, and we'll get into some of where that motivation came from later on. We talk about Mr. Jermaine Pratt. As far as running the ball, Giovanni Bernard had 3 carries for 7 yards. P. Ryan pitched in 9 carries for 51. Williams 4 for 74, had that big long 55-yard run where Humphrey kind of tracked him down at the end, saved the touchdown. But that's a lot. That's pretty much it on the ground. Now, as far as receiving, not a lot there as well. Their leading receiver, the tight end Sample, 2 catches for just 15 yards.
Just a sample.
Yeah, just a little sample. Defensively, their really only highlight was an interception by the linebacker Davis Gaither. But let's get on to the Ravens because, man, I mean, lots of highlights on this side. Jackson goes 10 of 18, throwing the ball for 113 yards, 3 touchdowns, and the 1 interception. Dobbins is the guy on the ground today. 13 carries, 160 yards with 2 touchdowns, had that long 72-yarder, which by the way, if anyone wants to go back and look at the highlight, he stiff arms Jermaine Pratt in order to spring himself free for that long run.
Yeah, there's still an APB out there for Jermaine.
Yeah, I mean
he's unable to be found.
His comment did not age well. Should not turn to Twitter.
He is still in the showers.
Yeah, not good. And then Lamar Jackson, 11 carries, 97 yards on the ground. He needed just 92 going into this one, Jimmy, to get to 1,000. He does it, becoming the first quarterback to ever go back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons. I mean, what more can you say about our guy?
I mean, it's just insane to me that he went 10 for 18 with 3 touchdowns. I think he's 46 now in the Reds, or 48?
47? No picks?
I think he was 45-0 before this game.
Well, but one came from outside the red zone. That Boykin one was a little longer.
True.
You know what I mean?
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah, so 46 or 47 with 0 interceptions in the red zone. It's just incredible to me. I am so excited to have Josh on the show to talk about, because they showed those clips during that game of the Chargers playoff game and the Titans playoff game. But to me, Lamar, especially the Chargers one, he was a boy. I mean, he was thrust into battle and he was just doing the best he could. I feel like he's so much further along than back then, and he just looks incredible to me. So, I mean, not really much I can do but praise him here. The other thing I want to say too is, speaking of praise, I'm going to praise myself a little bit because I picked J.K. Dobbins on the challenge.
Yes, you did, along with many others who we're going to get into.
That's right.
Yeah, you nailed that one. I mean, even before the 70-yarder, I think he was the lead guy. I mean, Lamar was challenging him, but Gus was a distant third, although he did have 12 carries for 60 yards and still had a serviceable game.
Yeah.
But you called it on Dobbins.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the rest of the winners, just to give you guys a quick shout out here, Chris Madry, Dylan Williams, Bruno Maureen, Josh Myers, Monty Mann, and Christopher Scott. One guy that we notice is not on the list, Daniel Kunimoto. The streak is over, my man.
Yep.
But hopefully you'll get
He'll
back
be
in
back.
the winner's circle. That's right.
Yeah, he'll be back. He'll be back. But let me just get in a couple more stats here before I get finished.
See, I'm all fired up. I'm like skipping over the stats and everything else. Jeez.
Now that's cool. That's cool. We saw Ingram, Jimbo. We saw Ingram first time in a few games. He gets 9 carries and turns it into 39 yards. So, it's nice to know that we still have him to turn to if need be. Because remember, we weren't sure if Gus was going to go in this. We heard some back tightness was an issue. Didn't look to be on the field. He looked just fine. Also, Duvernay had a 22-yard run. The reason I'm mentioning all these guys is, Jimmy, I don't know if I've ever heard this. The Ravens had 7 different players carry the football today. I mean, that is insane. And really, outside of Huntley, all the others were very, very effective. Even Justice Hill had only just 2 carries, but he turned it into 21 yards. The fact that they had 7 different guys carry the ball, I mean, that's not something you see very often in an NFL game.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because everyone talks about how we're an old school offense, but I think that we are the new old school, right? Like, it doesn't look the same as it used to, where it's just one guy, pounding the rock over and over and over again. You can't stop him, or even a running quarterback. So you got 2 guys, 7 guys, 7.
It's crazy. I mean, you hear about 7 different guys making catches, and that's a pretty impressive distribution of the ball. But 7 different ball carriers, that's really insane. Getting into the receiving, though, I got to talk about some of the receiving. Got to shout out Boykin.
Yeah.
He had the 1 catch, but it was a big one, a 43-yard touchdown. I just love the fact that when the ball, it was perfectly placed by Lamar. It was a beautiful throw. He was relatively wide open, but he didn't wait for the ball to come to his body. He extended the hands, caught it, and brought it in with just the hands. I love that. Shows confidence. You can always tell when a guy's a little shaky on his confidence by how he catches those wide open balls. If he's cradling and falling as he's just like, please catch the damn ball. But the fact that he attacked it with his hands, I love the confidence. Marquise Brown, I thought he had a heck of a game. I mean, that first, I was shocked to see him not complete that deep ball that Lamar hit. It bounced off his shoulder. It would have been like a 50-yard pass. But after that, Jimmy, I mean, what did you see from Marquise? Because he looked pretty darn good to me.
Yeah, you know what I noticed? A couple things. One, they're starting to integrate him into the short passing game. I think that's really important for the growth of our offense and the growth of Marquise as a player. I think that, everyone talks about, he's a small guy, and I think that plays into it. But it's only relative. So I think he still works in that type of scenario where it's a short screen for, pass for 2 reasons. One, they play so far off of him because they respect his speed. 2, because he's been playing at that size his whole life. And so if he's been able to be effective in that type of a short game scenario, a short pass scenario, it's not going to all of a sudden just stop being possible. Right. So even if he, a couple of them, I think he turned one into like a 3-yard gain, one into a 5-yard gain. Look, we'll take it. One was for a first down on a 3rd and 1. It was like a long one. And then the other one, we were pretty deep in our own territory. And, I think it wasn't a chunk play, but it was a solid play, and it gives the defense something else to think about. So I like that. But aside from that, one of the things that I liked about seeing in Hollywood today was that he ad-libbing isn't the word, but he almost, he was adding on to the end of his routes. That second touchdown, he ran all the way across the ends. He did not give up. He did not stop at the end of his route. He just kept going. And I think that shows his faith in Lamar. And then, that just shows the chemistry that's building between the two of them and him learning to play with Lamar as the type of quarterback that's throwing the football. So I'm excited. He's getting hot at the right time, Glenn.
He sure is. I absolutely love it. I mean, he had 5 catches for 41 yards, 2 touchdowns today. I'm excited. I love it's more like the mindset that I see, the change in his mindset. We're not seeing him just avoiding contact at all costs. He stiff-armed a defender to the ground today, Jimmy.
Yeah.
To the ground. Like, it's insane to me. This guy, he's come an awful long way, and he's just going to keep getting better. I mean, this guy's body is still developing. He's going to get bigger. He's going to get stronger. And that speed is not going anywhere. So I'm just excited to see how he performs in the playoffs. Because you're right. I mean, how many games in a row have we seen this guy score a touchdown? And now 2 in this one. So absolutely a great game.
I wonder how Coach Harper felt when he saw that stiff arm.
Oh man, I'm sure he's proud.
Just
Yeah,
pumping his
shout out to
chest
Coach
and all
Harper.
excited. That's
Yeah,
right.
this guy wakes up pumped up, so I'm sure he was ripping down walls when he saw Hollywood
In
do
the
that.
slaughterhouse.
I mean, yeah, he wakes up ready to lift.
Right.
And then Mark Andrews 4 for 27, modest game, but didn't need to lean on him a lot. Didn't really need to lean much on the passing game. It was very efficient.
And that's okay because if you remember last year, in that we played the Browns week 17 last year, right? Am I not
I believe
mistaken?
so. Yeah.
And you remember Mark got a little dinged
Oh
up.
no,
in
we
that
played
game.
we played the Steelers.
Sorry, but in the
RG3.
Browns game though, that second Browns game was late in the season. A
Yep.
couple folks got dinged up in that game. Mark
Including
being
Ingram.
one of them.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm okay with Mark having a pedestrian game and us getting in the playoffs healthy.
Yeah, no doubt. He had the ankle. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no doubt. So I want to get into a couple of storylines that played out before the game started because I found it interesting. Jimmy Smith was kind of a question mark coming to this game. He was able to return in a limited fashion to practice, and I heard a little note before the game that he was set to get a boost in his contract, set to get an extra $500,000 if he hit the 45% of if he was able to play a total of 45% of the defensive snaps for the season. Going into the game, he sat at 44.2% going into that game. So it looked like they were trying to get him up for the game in hopes that he could hit that threshold, and they just weren't able to get it done. But man, I mean, that's got to be disappointing when you're this close to an extra $500,000 payday and you don't get it. Oof.
Yeah, that's got to be tough. And I think that
are we twinning?
We are.
We're twinning. Yes. Not planned.
Yes.
Not planned.
Not planned. No, not at all. And but I do think that Jimmy, I think the Ravens did him a solid and found a way to slide that into some guarantees next year. I think and it's just another way the Ravens are able to show good grace towards their players and passively attract free agents, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I'm all right with it. I mean, that does suck, but I think that later is better than never. And I think that if you look at the structure of that new contract, I would bet that it's the correlation is not just coincidental.
Right. And let's be honest, Jimmy Smith's one of the fortunate members of the NFL that's been around for a long, long time. And I'm sure he's doing just fine in his pockets. And also, I wanted to get your take on this guy, Jimmy, because I think when they saw Makari was doubtful for this game, most assumed that Skura would go back into that role since he was thrust into that role last week when Makari went down. But surprisingly, maybe to some, not to everyone, Colon Castillo gets the confidence of the coaches and gets the start over Skura. Were you surprised to see that?
Yeah, I was actually a little surprised. It took me like 2 plays to realize because I was just already banking on Skura being in there. So Colon Castillo for me is now the little engine that could, because he's not a little man, but he looks small, at least height-wise, up there amongst those giants of giants on offensive line. But I like the power that he plays with nonetheless. His snaps seem to be better than Skura. Yeah. And I like his leverage. He can get under those guys' pads. A lot of those guys are taller than him, and he holds his ground. I've heard some really positive things about his lower body lifting ability. So I feel good about him moving forward in a backup type scenario. Certainly, I'm happy about it. So yeah, I mean, I nothing but good things to say about him. When you don't notice that your center's missing is a good sign when the backup's in there. But one name that didn't go today, you talked about Jimmy. Another one was Unique Ngakoue, who was dealing with a thigh contusion type issue. I'm pretty sure. We're hoping that he's ready to go for the playoffs, right?
No doubt. I mean, I think they looked at this game. They went pretty light on the defensive front to as far as their inactives and active list goes. I think they anticipated that they could be a little light in that area, given the fact that the Bengals did not come into this game with a very strong run game. Although they were running the ball a little bit better as of late. For the season, they were one of the lower performers in that category. So I think they just felt they could, and they wanted to make sure he was healthy and ready to go for whoever they got in the playoffs, because that's what I think the same goes for Jimmy Smith. I think both probably could have gone if need be, but I'm glad to see him get an extra week and get a little bit healthier. But yeah, as far as injuries go, I'm pretty happy with how the Ravens are entering the playoffs. I mean, obviously there was some season enders early on, but other than that, they're looking pretty healthy and not. They were able to build depth despite some injuries. I mean, now you look at the depth that they've now built on the offensive line with now Skura, Makari, and Colon Castillo able to play center. Yep. And then Skura has now developed himself into quite a Swiss Army knife and be able to be not just the backup center on game day. Because I think if Macari's healthy next week, I think Colon Castillo is likely going to be inactive, and they'll just have Skura, who can play now guard, center, and as well as he comes in often as the extra lineman. So we've been able to, and then Phillips played, he ended up playing the whole fourth quarter, I think, or at least a good portion of it with Fluker out. We've been able to develop some depth, man, and that's exciting in case the injury bug bites again in the playoffs.
Yeah, props to, I was thinking the same thing during the game, man. Props to the Ravens front office, but not just the front office in drafting, but developing these linemen to be able to plug and play. And like you said, I mean, we got a couple questions answered with health. Of course, we didn't sustain any serious injuries in this game, and then a late hit, and you mentioned it, but Gus, of course, came in and played well, so that's a check box for us. Marcus Peters had missed, came in and played well, that's a check box for us. So all those are things that bode in our favor. Which is awesome. But there's some before we get into some offensive and defensive, concerns and questions and storylines and things. I want to mention a couple insights here that I think are pretty cool. The Ravens have won 9 games by 20 plus points since 2019. That's the most in the NFL. And something that you always talk about, Glenn, is that with Lamar Jackson, one thing that's really cool is we win the games we're supposed to win. And we do so pretty handily. Like, once again, love Joe Flacco to death, but there's a little bit of this, right? Like playing to the level of competition where Lamar doesn't play that game. He will beat you down and put his cleats on your neck. That's good to see. The Ravens are 19-1 when Lamar has 70 or more rushing yards in a game.
Valuable, man. He is valuable. The deception he brings and adds to the offense is just valuable.
Yeah, and one other stat that blows my mind that you brought to me originally was that the Ravens have now won 98 straight games in which they've led by 14 or more points at the half. Fourth longest streak in the NFL history.
Longest current streak and it's not even close.
Right.
I think the Patriots have like 30 something and they're in second. Yeah, I mean that's absolutely insane.
And one other one that I think is pretty cool and I think that this last play that went to him when Lamar went out of the game was to kind of get there. But Mark Andrews is the first tight end in Ravens history with 700 plus receiving yards and 7 touchdowns in multiple seasons. Think of all the good tight ends we've had, and he's
saying something here.
Incredible.
Yeah, that is absolutely saying something here in Baltimore with you mentioned it, the great tight ends that we've had here. Yeah, that's insane. And also, I mean, when you just think about how many different running backs now, when I look at the season, what do we have? 3 running backs go over 700 yards again? I mean,
3 rushers.
Yeah, 3 rushers. Yeah, including
first time in NFL history we had 3 rushers go over 600 yards. A team has 3 guys rushing the ball go over 6. That's just insane.
Last year they did it last year too with Gus, Ingram, and Lamar last year. They all 3 did it.
Yeah, you're right.
Because Gus went for 750, and then Ingram and Lamar went over 1,000.
Crazy how you can just sit 1,000-yard rusher and then look better.
Yeah, it's nuts. But I want to get into some of these offensive storylines.
Yeah.
I mean, last year they were clearly the best offense last year, but this year again, Jimmy, they end up with the number 1 scoring differential in the National Football League. I mean, it's almost like it's confusing because last year, we were really hot, but then it's almost like we're more hot this year even than last year, which sounds crazy to even say.
Yeah, I think it's being engaged, right? Like having all of the neurons going in your brain, because I think at the end of the year last year, they were a little bit in cruise control coming into the playoffs. But now, because we've been in playoff mode for so long, I think it's doing something different to this team's psyche. And we're really hitting our stride. And it makes sense because we have, based on our players getting older, based on another year in the system, we have the ability to have a higher peak than last year. It's just about putting it together. Now, I know we've taken some hits, but even still, we have the guys in place to do it if we can stay engaged.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I think that's a good point. There is no doubt that they will not overlook the Titans this year, like Lamar said and admitted to doing last year. But I want to talk about a little bit of defense. We talked a lot of offense. I was fortunate enough to finally correctly predict a defensive star of the game. I predicted Chuck Clark would get an interception, and he did, and it was a nice one. I mean, a hands catch where he had to toe touch at the end of the game there against Green.
And they tried to take it away from him.
They tried, but AJ didn't. I mean, man, what happened by the way, let me just take a second. What happened to, I mean, is he just totally uninterested? He was making zero effort to try and get to the ball anytime the ball was thrown his way.
Yeah. You want me to tell you my opinion? I really think AJ Green's a great guy, and I think he's an incredible player. I think he really wants to get this offseason healthy.
And get out of
And
Cincinnati.
yeah, I think he's done. I don't
Yeah.
think he wanted to do a rebuild. I don't think,
No.
obviously, Zach Taylor has rubbed some vets wrong. I don't think he's a fan of it.
He needs to go to a team with a real owner, an owner who will put a indoor practice facility together, who will put a real weight room together. I mean, how is it that they still don't have an indoor practice facility? I mean, it's pathetic. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, well, he's just going to take a drive east out to Baltimore, man.
Is that
Look,
what you
AJ,
want? You want to see AJ involved?
yes, I want
Oh,
AJ
man.
Green here, man.
Yeah, because I don't want him going to New England or something. I could see him doing that too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But one other thing, defensive, and the other thing, just to kind of go off on a riff here, the Ravens are gonna pay for a free agent receiver. I don't know who it's gonna be, and I know there's a list. We will pay for someone this year. You mark my words. There's been a lot of years where I've always been in the camp where don't overreact, don't worry about it. We didn't get a receiver. This is who we are. We will pay for a receiver this offseason. Anyway, I digress. Okay. The other name I want to mention is the progression. We've talked about it a couple times throughout this year, but really the progression of Bowser. Of Tyus Bowser looks to be doing great things in the run game. And as you mentioned, if we line up against the Titans, he can, he will definitely be a centerpiece in that defense and sealing the edge.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think about his progress throughout the season, man? What do you make of it?
He's one of those interesting players because he's going to be graded often about his pass rushing ability, but that's just not what makes him really special to me. We've seen him intercept the ball. What do you have? An interception like 3 straight games.
Mm-hmm.
He's great in coverage for a linebacker. He was great in college. He's still great. But what I love about this game is there were so many times where I saw him sideline to sideline, but not give up an inch as far as the line of scrimmage. He would force that ball carrier all the way to the sideline, and when the play was over, he was pushing the ball carrier out of bounds, but not even giving up a yard. I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, it's looking likely that the team we're going to be playing in the playoffs is going to be old King Henry led Tennessee Titans. So you're going to need to seal that edge. It's something we were not able to do last season against them. And I think Bowser could end up being a big piece in slowing down that rush attack that, man, it really killed us last year, Jimbo.
Yeah, and the other thing, my favorite play from Bowser in this game was when he was doing his job by containing the edge, and then the running back decided to cut it upfield, and he still had the athleticism to dive inside, get him by the ankles, and it only turned into like a 2 or maybe 3-yard gain. But that was a really special play to me for him to have the ability to, we've seen JK burn so many guys when he puts that foot in the ground and he cuts upfield. Mm-hmm. And now this running back obviously isn't JK, but at the end of the day, for him to have the ability, the unique ability to and athleticism to do that speaks a lot to his game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then another guy I want to talk about, a guy that he kind of got banged on a little bit early on for not being as great as his counterpart or his coworkers in the secondary, as you could say. Anthony Averett has continued to show improvement all season. Mm-hmm. And man, he is turning out to be a valuable player to have when you consider the fact that if Jimmy is back in the playoffs, which we expect, he's now our 4th cornerback. And the way he's played as of late, he's not looked like a 4th corner. I think you pointed out that him and Marlon probably have some familiarity going back to Alabama. I imagine their careers may have overlapped for at least a year where they were the starters at Alabama. We've seen a lot of them 2 back there, especially when Peters was out, and he's looked really good, man. I mean, he's looked physical. He's looked willing to stick his nose in there in the run game. I've been really impressed with Averett, and I know people are going to say, well, he's no Peters, he's no Humphrey. Well, yeah, you're not going to have a ton of all pros later, but the fact that this is your 4th corner, that's pretty darn good.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with the time that Jimmy Smith has been missing lately, he's going to be leaned on, even more, even as Jimmy comes back for the playoffs. He hasn't been there. So Averett will be asked to do even more. And plus there's a ton of sets where we have 4 guys out there anyway.
Oh, absolutely.
So yeah, no, I agree with you there. Now there are this game was awesome. And in fact, it was it was reminiscent of a game, of a few games, more than a few, of a decent amount of games last year in that I wasn't biting my nails at the end of the game. But there were still some things we got to clean up, right? Mm-hmm. 6 penalties for 49 yards is still sloppy.
Yep.
Still a tough game penalty wise. They only, the losing team only had half the penalties.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not we agree with all the calls is one thing. Obviously, Peters was really fired up and made up for that previous play in which he felt like he was unjustly penalized. Mm-hmm. But Now, I think we're trending in the right direction, but it still needs to be cleaner. If I'm not mistaken, oh, you know what? There was the
Yeah, there was a
offsides
couple
on.
pre-snaps. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there was.
Yeah, there was a
Gosh
couple
dang it.
pre-snap, but really what bothered me though, Jimmy, and I guess it shouldn't because it was such a blowout. But again, I saw another play, and let me know if you saw this as well. Judon, very close to the end of the game, was a 3rd and long. He beats the right tackle around the edge, he's obviously going to sack it, and he gets held, but he gets held in such a crazy way. The guy literally grabs the back of his nameplate and grabs the back of his shoulders and holds him just for a second. But Judon fled, and he looks at the ref and no call again. And we talked about this on the show all year, how many penalties we've been called as far as, holding on us on our offensive linemen, but we never seem to get holding called on the opposing team's offensive linemen. And it's crazy. I rewound the play 3 times. I'm like, how did they not? He grabbed him by his nameplate, Jimmy. That's how much he beat him. But I mean, it drives me crazy. But even if you take that away, 6 penalties is still too much. I mean, they just got to find a way to cut that number in half. I want to see 3 at most in this playoff game because they just can't beat themselves. It not against a team like Tennessee that's already shown that they can beat us without help.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. So let's do this. Let's get into our players of the game. Let's hand out our game balls offensively and defensively. And then make sure you guys stay here because we are going to just briefly talk about preferences as far as playoff scenarios. We will we'll put an episode out about that, but we just kind of want to give you guys a little bit to chew on, if you will.
That's right. That's right.
So Glenn, who is your defensive player of the game?
Yeah, my defensive player is the guy I predicted would get the interception, and he did. Chuck Clark. I thought he played he was around the ball a lot. I'll say that. I mean, there's no doubt that, there's no doubt that when he's in coverage that they were trying to get the ball. But I mean, look, Cincinnati couldn't get anything done. So really everyone looked great, but I had to give it to Chuck Clark because he hit a fantastic all hands interception. And I believe that was his first pick of the year. So yeah, I got to give it to Chucky. Who you got?
Yeah, so I'm going a little unconventional here, but you mentioned it was really a team effort. And so I'm going with Wink Martindale. Wink Martindale, who played 0 snaps, registered 0 stats, but
sweat more than anyone in the game.
That's right. And I love that he wears gloves. Like, not just gloves, he wears
like golfing gloves.
Yeah, or they're athletic gloves. Like, dude, you're not even in the game. It reminds me of when Jim Harbaugh used to wear cleats on the sideline.
It's a mindset, Jimbo.
Like, dude, come on, man. So anyway, I give it to Wink Martindale for dialing up a great game plan. I think you mentioned this in the last show. I think he'll be a head coach next year. I agree with that 100%. But so I'm giving it to Martindale, and I'm banking on him to do the same thing in the coming week, first week of the playoffs, and from there on out. But
oh man, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Well, my offensive player of the week has got to be Lamar Jackson, same as last week. 10 of 18, 113 with 3 touchdowns, just the 1 pick. That was really his only bad play of the game, and it was a tip ball at the line of scrimmage that I think Cologne Castillo would probably say he had something to do with that lineman being able to get his arms up like that. You got to make them D linemen pay. That was 2 times in a row that the same D lineman batted a ball up for Lamar, and the second of which was picked off. And I know that Cologne Castillo would like to give him a little shot to the stomach next time he gets them arms up a little too high, make him think twice. But then on the ground, another couple highlights. I mean, 11 for 97. The guy has just got to be the most, it's like my dad kept saying, maddening. Our offense has got to be the most maddening offense to play against because you can do everything right. There was a 3rd down where they blanketed our receivers, absolutely blanketed, but Lamar just ran for 15. I mean, it's just like, what are you supposed to do? So with him at the helm, as long as he's decisive and makes good decisions, we're going to be real hard to beat, Jimbo.
No, I hear you 100%. And I have to go here with J.K. Dobbins. I got to go with J.K. Dobbins, the man that is fast, is strong, is elusive. His straight line speed, that 72-yard run was reminiscent of his Ohio State days where once he gets in a straight line, look out. I think that's one of the things that's rare about him. Body built by Beans, the vegan himself, just that's out there dogging it, man. I guarantee you he's munching on some beans in the pregame, getting that plant protein. I love
and if anyone was wondering why we drafted a running back in the 2nd round after we had the best running team in the history of the league, this is why. Because we still didn't have a guy outside of Lamar that could do what he just did, and that's break a 70-yard run and run away from everyone. just a few plays before that, the Bengals had their biggest play of the game where their running back broke a 50-yarder and Marlon Humphrey was able to run him down. Well, when I saw JK hit them afterburners, I said, we ain't got to worry about no corner for the Bengals running down JK. JK was gone.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's why he's here, Jimbo.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I loved seeing it, and it was really cool. You're talking about drafting the second round. After that play, they panned over to the sideline, and he was dapping up Patrick Queen. And I thought in my head, how cool is it that that's our 1 and our 2?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And how impactful they are now. Not next year. They're not average. They are making an impact on a playoff-bound Baltimore Ravens, baby. So he runs for 160 on 13 carries and 2 touchdowns. So JK gets my game ball, my player of the game from an offensive perspective. But Glenn, before we sign out really quick here, let's just take a second and talk about what the remaining scenarios are, what our preferences are. So if I'm not mistaken here, if the Titans beat the Texans today, we will take, because the Dolphins lost and the Browns won, we are now in the 5 seed.
Yes, locked in.
Right. So we are set for the 5 seed. So there's only 2 scenarios left. It will either be the Colts or it will be the Titans. Is that correct?
Yes. Oh, sorry about that. I'll turn them. Yeah, it will be. And what's interesting, if I'm not mistaken, the Browns just barely beat the Steelers this week to cement their trip to the playoffs for the first time since 2002, I believe.
And they'll be playing next week.
They play each other exactly again next week. So that's going to be interesting. And this time, the Steelers will have their full complement of players. It's going to be interesting to see if the Browns can, because, man, as much as we've beat up on the Browns, nobody has beaten up on the Browns like the Pittsburgh Steelers over the years. So I know that they're going to be going into that game with a lot of pressure. The pressure of Cleveland's hopes and dreams will be on the shoulders of Baker Mayfield. And I don't even have to ask you, Jimmy, how that's going to go. But, yeah, I think it looks like, barring anything crazy, I mean, it looks like the Ravens are going to play the Titans. It would take now. Indy has lost. It's the only loss the only win that Jacksonville has is over Indy. So it's not impossible, but I would be very shocked to see Indy lose that game today with everything to play for and Jacksonville with absolutely nothing. And I'm sure their vacation already planned. So it looks like we're going to play Tennessee. And I tell you what, is that the team I'd pick if I had to? No, I wouldn't pick them. But if we remember when the Ravens won their last Super Bowl, they had to beat Peyton Manning, who beat the crap out of us a bunch of times in the playoffs in the regular season. They had to go in and beat Tom Brady, okay? They had to beat the Colts before both of them, who, although they didn't have Peyton Manning anymore, we remember with the Colts left Baltimore. And then to cement it and win the Super Bowl, they checked a lot of boxes. Well, that would be the same this year because it looks like their route is going to be through Tennessee, then through Kansas City at Arrowhead. Is what it's looking like, and then probably Buffalo or the Steelers they're going to probably have to play all 3 of those guys. So it's going to be fun, but it's going to be challenging. But it will. There's no way it could be a better ending than if they somehow beat all of these teams and win the Super Bowl. It would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let me ask you this: I have a preference, and I think a lot between the Colts and the Titans. Like you said, the chances of us playing the Colts are very low. So I want the Titans, baby,
because you want all the smoke.
Yeah, I want it all. I want it right now. I want the Titans. I want them tomorrow. I want them the next day. I can't wait.
Look, I would much rather play old busted up Phillip Rivers.
I would give anything to watch Vrabel's post game after we shellac them, man. I tell you, I do not like Mike Vrabel. You know that. And I can't wait for him to stiff John in the post game after we put it on him.
I hope he pulls him in like his brother did to Schwartz.
That's right.
Pull him in. Nah, that's not a quick handshake. Let's stand here for a second. But that's going to be I mean, man, I can't wait for this game. I'm getting jacked. What do we know? Have any idea of what time would it be, a Saturday or a Sunday game?
I do. If you bear with me really quickly, I think that I have the news that we need here. Let's see. So the wild card. Oh, you know what? They have I don't know.
We don't know yet. Okay.
Nope.
All right. So
when we know, you guys will know.
Yeah, we'll definitely, as soon as the full playoff picture is become apparent, we will definitely be putting out a video and letting everybody know who they're playing, where they're playing, and when they're playing.
Yeah, and we let us know what you guys think, what your preference is. Give us your take on this game. Shout out to all of our. I know, man. Shout out to all our challenge winners, and of course we'll have one next week. And like I said, got a ton of great stuff coming up this week.
Yeah.
Really excited for it. Let us know your thoughts on this game, who you want to play in the playoffs. Leave us all your comments below, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
See you.